AITA for not giving up my train seat? I had an incident on the train last week and it's been bothering me since it happened. I'm wondering whether or not I was the asshole. My family are split and the whole situation was upsetting and left me pretty shaken. I was traveling down to visit my uncle for New Year who has been struggling with cancer and couldn't spend time with the whole family during Christmas. I had to take the train with my 2 kids, ages 4 and 7, and it was a pretty last-minute booking as we weren't sure if me and the kids were going to be able to go. It was about a 7-hour trip all around with about 4 of that on the train, and my kids were really tired and everything was a bit overwhelming, so I didn't see a problem with sitting in the seats marked as reserved whilst the train was still pretty empty. The journey was quiet. We got to have a bit of rest and have a few drinks and some food which the kids appreciated since it was such a long day for them. When people came on looking for their seats, I stayed quiet and hoped their seats weren't ours. A man walked up and down the train a few times before starting to ask people if they could move, so he could see the numbers on the headrests, which I thought was pretty rude when he could easily have just sat in another seat for now. The train wasn't that full. Anyway, it turned out that my daughter was sitting in the seat this guy had reserved, and when he aggressively said to her that she was in his seat, she kind of looked a bit startled and looked to me. I had been watching this guy be rude to other passengers and I was pretty angry that he'd speak to my daughter the same way, rather than look to me and ask politely. She's 7 and is obviously with me. I told her to stay where she was as there weren't any other seats she could move to that were next to me and suggested he sit somewhere else as there were more than a few seats dotted around. He goes off muttering and I assumed he was going to sit down, but he came back a few minutes later with a member of staff and was shouting at this point how we had stolen his seats that he'd paid money for and we weren't even supposed to be on the train. The woman checked our tickets and I explained to her that we were just tired and didn't think it would have been a problem to sit in the seats whilst the train wasn't full. To his fury, the woman told us not to worry and also suggested that he sit elsewhere. He started shouting about how we had stolen his seat and children weren't above the law. Long story short, he was told that he needed to get off the train at the next stop as he wasn't welcome on the service. At this point, both of my kids were pretty shaken and I regretted the whole journey but wasn't sure what I could even do at this point. Was I the asshole here for creating this situation? Part of me thinks this man was just crazy and was going to cause an argument with somebody even if it wasn't us, but I'm not sure. YTA. He paid for that seat, and your level of entitlement is staggering. I'm honestly shocked that the staff member sided so blatantly with you. If the train wasn't that full, why would you sit in the reserved spots? YTA, you sat in seats you knew weren't yours and when confronted you were all Pikachu face shocked. In this situation, try and look it from the other person's perspective. Yeah? It's New Year's Eve and you're on a train going somewhere far away. You're in a bad mood and you're looking for your seat. You can't find it and you're becoming more and more agitated. Eventually you find out that a child was sitting in a seat you paid for. You tell the child to move so you can get the seat you paid for, but the mom is going full mama bear on you, telling you to go sit somewhere else. So now you're angry. Essentially, this woman is telling you to go sit somewhere else and they're essentially disrespecting you and the assigned seating for the train. You feel robbed and what do? You go and notify an attendant so that they can correct the situation. The attendant comes and you explain to them how this mother and child were in your assigned seating. The mother says to the attendant, I understand this gentleman wants his seat, but me and my daughter are tired so we won't be giving these seats up. The attendant turns to you and says, sorry, nothing we can do here. Enraged, you go off and tell the attendant how it isn't fair and you paid for this seat. You're even more enraged because the attendant is someone who works for the company and they should be obligated to correct the situation. In the end, you're the one who gets kicked off the train because of your anger and the mom and child get to continue sitting in a seat you paid for. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of justice op. But doesn't this feel like an injustice to that person? Was it beyond your capabilities to get up and go to another seat instead of telling this guy to go somewhere else? What force in the universe made you feel as though you were obligated to continue sitting in this man's seat? YTA, this is why people hate other people with kids. Just because you didn't book early enough and you didn't find seats together for your family, another person that did book the seat has to be removed so you don't stand? Do you realize that at the next stop somebody can come for the empty seats that are probably reserved as well and make the man get up? That is why the man wanted to sit in his own seat, to avoid such issues. What is wrong with you? You refuse to move your daughter? You are teaching your kids it's right to take other people's seats just because you have children? Why did you not just apologize and get up when asked? The kids could have sat down and you could stand up. YTA. Why couldn't you and your daughter move? You just enjoy escalating the matter. You're the YTA. As you said, the train wasn't full and you could have easily moved to different seats, but you were being an about it. He paid for his reserved seat and he should be able to sit in his reserved seat. YTA. Way to teach your children to be entitled. YTA, and I don't actually believe the employee told him to sit somewhere else and didn't ask your family to move. YTA, the train wasn't full, yet you had to sit on seats marked as reserved? I mean, yeah, YTA. You knew those weren't your seats and specifically didn't want him to see the seat number. If he sat down somewhere else, then he would have probably just ended up in a different person's seat and caused another problem. YTA. You didn't reserve those seats. If the train was pretty empty, why didn't you just sit elsewhere? If there weren't 2 or 3 seats together, you could have asked someone to switch with you. You sound very entitled. YTA. Why didn't you reserve your own seats knowing this would be a long, stressful trip with young children? He rightfully paid for those seats, and having children doesn't mean you are entitled to whatever you want because it's most convenient for you. You posted on here for judgment and yet you keep arguing with others when they give it to you. Accept it that you are the and try to be better. YTA. Sorry, assigned seats are that way for a reason. Some people need to sit in certain seats for various reasons, so they choose an assigned seat. Of course, YTA, he paid to reserve his seat. You didn't. YTA. You said yourself the train wasn't full, but you decided to sit down in reserved seats nevertheless. It doesn't matter that you were traveling with kids, that they were exhausted, that the man was rude. It was your decision to choose these seats, to not reserve seats yourself. What started the whole kerfuffle, and thus you are YTA. As a regular train user, you are wrong. I book my seat specifically for very good medical reasons. You taking it can cause me huge issues. The person shouldn't have acted like they did, but equally I can see why they would. Wait. If there are 3 of you in a 4-seater, why didn't you move your daughter so the man can have his seat? So you just took over the whole section? Wouldn't even let him have 1 seat of 4? No wonder he was pissed off. YTA for taking a reserved seat. Why didn't you have seats for your daughter? YTA. He's an for his attitude, but you are the instigator in this situation. YTA. Of course you are. You knew you were in someone's seats and didn't move, then got them kicked off. YTA. X 1000 kids are not above anything. Just because you have a kid doesn't make your day worse than someone else's. Do you know his situation? What kind of day he had?